Welcome back to Seth Speaks, and we are on the second episode of my methodology of sorts called The Cycle. The last episode, we talked about understanding why you are where you are, right? And then in that episode, we talked about the reason why that could be is because of complacency, or you not knowing that there's a problem, or you might not have the right people or things in your life. That was the first episode, right? And that one was very intensive, and it was very deep because, especially the last question, right? It's like you might not have the right people or things in your life, or certain things may have happened to you that you had no control over. You probably want some kind of like apology or forgiveness from that person or that thing that happened to you, and you won't get that. So then it's really hard to look in the mirror to figure out that you got to fix this problem that somebody gave to you. It's really difficult. So if you haven't listened to that episode, I think you really should, because now we're about to get into how we can start to break that stuff down and start to formulate essentially the pattern within the cycle, like what your mind is going through when this stuff happens to you. So today we're going to talk about recognizing the problem, right? And this is another gut punch, because once you recognize it, you have all the information that you need to start to change this thing. And that can be a blessing and a curse, because sometimes the things can be so heavy that you don't want to deal with them, and you want to sit and be complacent, because you would rather sit and suffer and settle than to look that thing in the eye and go fight it to change, right? Like it's super difficult to do that sometimes, and you got to pick your poison. You sit and you settle and you suffer, or you fight and you scrap to change this thing, right? So we're going to start with recognizing the problem. Now, the first thing about recognizing the problem is looking to see where this thing came from. So let's use something simple like language, right? So I would swear a lot because where I grew up, and also because of the sport that I played. So there's a lot of profanity within that sport and within the environment that I lived in, right? So now I'm like, okay, I got kids, and like I'm not playing football no more. I'm swearing a lot. It's not really healthy or conducive to the person that I want to be. That kind of verbiage and language doesn't work for my environment with my kids and my wife. And it's a problem, because now when I am in a frenzy or I'm frustrated, I resort to probably swear words, right? So now I'm like, okay, I kind of recognize that this is a problem and I need to change it, right? So now that I recognize the problem, I'm like, all right, where did this come from? Because here's the thing, you can't recognize a problem and try to fix it without honoring where it came from. Honoring where it came from is going to help you understand. Well, I think you almost kind of give yourself forgiveness, understand, because you understand it's not your fault that this is that your behavior isn't because of something that you chose to essentially do, right? And I think you can flip a coin and go, tit for tat for that, because sometimes you do choose the things that you do, right? We're a product of our environment, and a lot of the times our environment is the reason why we are the way that we are, and you have to figure out what to take from that environment into the person or life that you want to build. So with the swearing thing, for example, is okay. Now I'm honoring the problem. I said it in the beginning. It's like, okay, my dad swore a lot growing up, and when I played football, the coaches swore. The kids were swearing. When I first signed up for junior Pee Wee, I was 10 years old, and the players are swearing. I'm like, oh crap! Like y'all can cuss. Like my dad and mama beat the crap out of me if I cuss. But then it became normal, right? It became normal to where now I can just like, I'm just a part of the crew. You know what I'm saying? Like they swearing, they saying the B word and F word and like saying all this stuff and talking about girls X kind of way. Cool. I'm gonna talk like that too. So now as a grown man, I'm like, okay, like I need to stop swearing because this isn't conducive to my environment no more. Recognize the problem. Boom, got it. Now I gotta go honor it. I gotta find the root of it. Okay, where is this coming from? Oh damn, like my dad like swore a lot growing up. You know what I'm saying? Oh, like real bad profanity started at like 10 years old because all the players were swearing. You know what I'm saying? And then as you got older and you understood what swear words and stuff meant and how to use them to your advantage to some degree too. Like you can really like talk smack and use certain words that will really break somebody down for you to beat them in competition, right? Or to really emphasize a point, you would swear with this super vigorous voice to get your point across and people will feel you. Comedians will use swearing in comedy to emphasize a joke that makes it funnier. Like if you listen to a joke, if they take the swear words out, it's not as funny, right? So then I'm starting to recognize all these things like, oh damn, okay, this is where this is coming from. So now I'm honoring the problem. So now that I honor the problem and I found the root to it, now it's about figuring out how to go about this. So that's one example for me. And this is essentially what this is honoring the problem, seeing the patterns within the problem, and then finding the root to the problem. And these things can kind of be interchangeable. It's like depending on where you're at, you can choose which one to start with. You have any examples maybe we can do like a case study or something of how to do this practically for people who are listening. In the last episode, we talked about jobs, relationships, and mentality. Let's make a case study. Let's like think of somebody who is dealing with something, and now we can help them break down what the problem probably is. Jeff in Florida, he's a mechanic, and he has 2 kids, and he has a porn addiction. Right? So let's start with something like that. Like that's Jeff with his kids and his porn addiction, and he's married too. Let's start with that. So he knows that there's a problem and he has a porn issue, right? So now that he has this issue, it's like, okay, like I can't stop watching this stuff. I know that it's wrong. I know that it can mess up my relationship. Okay, you recognize the problem. That's great. I feel like a lot of people can resonate with that specific problem, knowing that it's wrong, and continue to do it. And I think it's because they're not honoring the problem, right? Or finding the root to the problem. So if I was talking to Jeff, I'd be like, all right, bro, like, when did this start for you? And this is a case study for everybody. Oh, it started when I was young, when I saw, the first magazine at the store or something. And now I went down this whole rabbit hole of like, now I just want that dopamine hit or whatever. Okay, great. Now you recognize the root of the problem. Okay, now since when you saw that when you were 7 or 8 years old, or that's kind of young, like 10 years old, that's still kind of young, like 10 or 11 years old or whatever. Now, well, what has that done for you now that you're 30? Okay, what has that done for you? Well, it's made me kind of like insecure. It's made me have really bad eyes for women in general when I'm walking around and looking into the world. It has made me my intimacy with my wife more difficult because I have all these images in my head or whatever, like all these different things. Okay, great. Now you understand like what it's done. Okay, so we understand the root. We understand that you honor the problem. What are some patterns that are happening in your life now? Like, what is the pattern to get you to do that thing, right? And this is like a secret sauce. Like, what's the pattern? Because there's something that always leads you to that thing, right? Like, is it
like stress?
Stress could be one. Is it a coping mechanism?
Right.
Is it you getting into an argument with your wife and then you go to that thing to have some kind of like relief or whatever? What are these different patterns that's making you resort back to that thing? Because remember, the actual act or the thing that you're watching isn't the actual problem. It's the surface level thing to the actual deeper problem, right? So now we're gonna see these patterns, and when we see the patterns, what do we do with them now? Now we can see from a bird's eye view that, yeah, this isn't my fault, but the actions that I'm taking are very much my responsibility, and they're gonna hurt the people that are closest to me if I don't fix this problem. So that's what you do. You find the root, you honor it, you see the patterns, and you sort of play the patterns in your head over and over. Okay, this is what I'm doing. Oh, that's why I'm doing it. I do it at this time. or I do it in this specific scenario. I do it when I'm stressed. So now when you see these patterns happening, now you have the proof. I don't know if proof's the right word, but now you have like the awareness. Yo, I'm getting stressed, bro. Yo, me and my wife getting in an argument, man. And like, I know what I go to after that. That's really huge to see the pattern, because now you can almost like get ready to like put your gloves on and fight it rather than just falling into it right away because you don't see the pattern.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense?
Yeah, I think it does. I think that is like a mindset shift too for anyone in that situation, because it's one thing to identify the problem, to honor the problem, but then you also have to have the mindset shift to be motivated to fight the problem, especially when those patterns come up. Because I think it's a normal human behavior to be like, to not hold yourself accountable and like give yourself room to relax on your restrictions. Oh, I'm stressed. I'm like super stressed this time, so I'll just like let it go this time. But like next time I'm stopping. Do you know what I'm saying by that?
Yeah.
And I think like that's the mindset shift that you have to start to have for yourself of like, I have to be firm if I truly want this to be changed. Swearing or whatever it is.
It's interesting because when I think about being firm and like being disciplined and all these things, when you want to change like these patterns, once you like find the root to the problem, what's interesting is that like being firm and just stopping cold turkey are two completely different things.
Right.
And you have to be able to decipher between the two, because being firm almost gives you a cop out sometimes, and quitting cold turkey makes you stop, but it's almost really unrealistic that you'll be able to get through it. You see what I'm saying? So you have to be able to, and that's why honoring the problem is so important, because when you honor it, you give yourself like that leeway to be like, man, it's not my fault. And it's going to take me some time to work up out of this. Right. So this is where I think having somebody this is where like an accountability partner can be really good. You know what I mean? Like with the swearing or something. Like with me and Alex, I was like, every time we swear, like, let's do 10 push-ups. You know what I'm saying? Like with if you're Jeff, it's like find somebody. Well, I don't know if you really find somebody, but I think you have sight blockers or some crap like that. You know what I mean? Like there's a bunch of things like that. But I think the most important thing is like just seeing the pattern, and then once you see that pattern, being aware of it and being ready to fight those demons when they come up. Because now when you have the pattern, it's like, all right, now I know it's coming up. Now I gotta fight these different patterns that are coming up, because it's not just one. There's always multiple within one thing. You always lead to that thing that you don't want to do by signals in a bunch of different areas of your life. So we talked about Jeff. It's his wife, it's his stress at work, it's whatever. If it's the swing, it's like, oh, it's me being frustrated, it's the house getting dirty, it's having a bad day at work. Okay, these are some things that lead to that.
Yeah.
Right? So now, going through my day, I realize like, yo, like this is kind of happening right now. Like I'm having a bad day at work. So I need to be aware that my language resorts to this. You give yourself a fighting chance. You see what I'm saying?
So my one question would be, I think it takes an incredible amount of self-reflection to not only see the problem, but like want to change it. How do you do that? How do you like self-reflect in a way that you feel like is impactful? And I think I'm asking from like, are you asking yourself certain questions? That's one. And two, how are you actually doing it? Are you doing it in the car? Are you writing it down? Are you talking to someone about it?
Damn, that's a good question. So I think there's a few things that I do, and I think they're all predicated on like what the problem is at hand. So if I'm going through a hard time in marriage, for example, I have a few things that I do. I like write about the problem. I'll speak to people that I trust. I'll talk to you about this is what I'm going through. Like, give me your perspective. Like, don't lie to me. Am I tripping? Is she tripping? What should I do? And I think the car one is actually a really good one because I think a lot of times I'll be in the car and I'll drive, not listening to music and just processing like what it is that I'm going through and what's going on, like what's my wife's side and what's my side, and how can we come together, or how can I communicate what my side is so she can hear me. She does the same for me, and we come to a solution.
Mm-hmm.
I think isolation is a really big one. We're like, and isolation doesn't mean that that you go somewhere by yourself to get away. Isolation means like literally isolating your mind from everything that's going on and processing on that one thing that's bugging you or that's messing you up or messing up your day or messing up your marriage, whatever, and coming to a solution for that thing. So isolation is the root of all those things that I just said. You know, I'm isolating myself having a conversation with you because my attention is going on that thing that I'm speaking to you about. We're not talking about nothing else.
Right.
So you can use people, you can use resources like writing and books, and you can use something like a drive or a walk or a run or lifting weights or something like that.
I think it's so underrated how much we don't let ourselves process things now.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I think like you're really good at it and I'm learning more about it, but like we are constantly jamming as much information as we can into our brains, either music or podcasts or the news, like social media. Then we're talking to people, then we're at work and we're talking at client meetings or whatever that's like. Then we come home and you're talking to your kids, and like your brain is never truly processing.
I'm gonna share something with you. So didn't know this was gonna come up, but remember I told you I've been getting up in the morning. I've been doing like morning pages on the days that I work out. And this morning, so I've been doing it, and I recognize through writing, I realized that I wake up in the morning. Didn't know this until I started writing. I always have a song on my mind. I always have music on my mind. And it's getting in the way of me writing. And I'm just like, damn, I did not realize I have music in my head first thing in the morning. Because most of the time I'm figuring out the thing to do in the morning. I gotta brush my teeth, do my hair, cook the breakfast. But now that I'm taking time to pause and write, if I'm not distracting myself with something to do, then like I don't see my default settings for my brain in the morning.
Right.
So this morning I wrote, I ain't gonna read it, but I basically wrote like, yo, like I've been doing morning pages, and every morning I have a song on my mind, the most random song or a song that I was listening to. So I was listening to that that song in the office the other day, Snooze by SZA. I was listening to that over and over, and it was on my freaking mind. I'm like, oh, because I'm listening to that song on repeat all the time. So I was like, I always thought you had to watch what you consume to make sure that you're not being a bad person, taking in bad stuff. But this morning I realized like, oh my God, bro, I need to just watch what I consume consistently, especially when it comes to music and words, because that has influence on, not influence, but it's stuck. It's a pattern in my head.
Yeah.
It's a pattern in my head that like music is very potent, right? So now I can't even think about my thoughts because I'm constantly listening to this thing on repeat. So it made me think about what you just said. It's like, yeah, that's 100% right. That's a pattern within itself. So that makes sense at all?
Yeah,
like
100%. And
yeah.
I think like we almost have created not a fear, but just like a dislike for that. Like I even think about like I hate silence. And I mean, we live in a city, so even that is like, there's always a lull of some type of noise,
like buzz or something.
Yeah,
right.
That's a better way for it.
Yeah.
And I think like to truly sit with your thoughts is so impactful for moving forward.
That's so crazy, dog. Because like, I think I sit with my thoughts so much,
Right?
And I guess I never really recognized that. And that's probably what Bombay Beats did to me. Middle of the desert, bro, nothing to do. I would go on walks just thinking about stuff at 15, not probably having the comprehension or the skills to really even know what I was thinking about. You know what I mean? But now I need that isolation sometimes to be with my thoughts. Like I went to the cabin last year, and I'm just sitting in the cabin, right? Like, or was that this year? Yeah. I'm just sitting there with my thoughts, writing, and in the quiet, no TV. I'm just laying there, or I'm writing, writing is a form of being with your thoughts and sitting with it's a more potent way of being with your thoughts, because now you're putting it on paper, you're articulating what you're actually thinking. So yeah, just went down a whole like rabbit hole.
Well, just to quickly come back, I think that everything you're saying, I'm saying it's like, yes, you're slowing down. It doesn't mean you're slowing your life down, but you are slowing down in order to ramp back up.
I think the best word for that is you're actually processing.
Yeah.
Like you're really processing now in every sense of the word. Whereas like back to what you said is like, we're never really processing. We're just consuming. We're these machines of consistent consumption.
Right.
And you don't give yourself time to process like your actual thoughts. And this morning when I wrote, I'm like, man, I can't even give myself a chance to know what my thoughts are, because this music is always in my head. There's some random song I listened to the day before.
Right.
You see what I'm saying? So yeah, I think where that whole thing came up from, like really recognizing the patterns that are going on. Like I recognized one this morning to even just articulate and process my own thoughts in the morning. We all have those patterns in our life that are correlated to something that we want to change. And it's important to find those patterns. And because when you find them and you recognize them, you give yourself a fighting chance to fight against the thing before it actually comes up. Because in order to get to that thing, you got to complete the pattern. You got to complete that pattern. And then at the end of that pattern is the thing that you probably don't want to do. So I think that's the biggest thing from this episode is like finding the root, honoring the problem, recognizing the patterns, and giving yourself a fighting chance to fight that pattern before you get to the end of it and you do that thing. So yeah, that's the second part of the cycle series. And we're going to finish it up on the next episode about the actual cycle, coming up with a plan to defeat this thing.